Good morning, and let me start. So far, we had basically looked at basic programming concepts without writing per se any C program, whatever syntax you want to look at. So conceptually, we studied why do we need something called variable. Variable means something that changes, its value can change. And we took an example of a polygon and saying if I want to determine the side, what length it is, depending on user choice, it could be 50 pixels or 100 pixels or whatever, because depending on the requirement, size could change. So we need to store that value. And because it can vary, VARY, hence we have a term called variables, means something that can change, we need to store. So we looked at the need of variables. Then we look at different types of variables. We started with integer, like an angles, for hexagon 60 degree, for pentagon 72 degree left, and so on and so forth. But when to heptagon, we cannot have just integer value because everything has to sum up to 360. Otherwise, we do not get real full polygon. So we need to have differentiating between so-called integer variables versus the decimal numbers, or what is called real numbers or floating point. We give indication, but we'll get into more details of how to use them, how to assign them. Then we also discussed integers could be negative or positive. Like if I'm saying forward 100, I'm moving in the right direction forward. But if I say forward minus 100, I'm moving in the negative direction. So that means my variable should support both positive and negative values. And in system, how does it differentiate or represents? We looked at implementation tools complement and ask you to work out few exercises to look at how it is. I'm not sure how many of you tried doing it, but again, I would recommend take your last four digit of a phone number and can you represent them as your binary number. Take a negative of last three digits. Can you represent them as a two's complement and see are you able to add that? So do as a homework exercise so that the notion of two's complements becomes clear. Yesterday, I was talking to your class rep as well as to the class teacher, and general input given to me as some of you has a biology background and no mathematics background in 11th, 12th class. You all have studied mathematics till 10th class, irrespective of whether you are a humanities student or a biology or science or whatever. So you have basic mathematics. And all that mathematics I talked about is power of twos, binary number, which you studied, so all you need to do a refresh. Especially those when you say you don't have mathematical background, you are an AIML student, and down the line you may be dealing with matrices, determinant, some part of differential calculus as part of ML course. So it's a good time for you to catch up and revise what a matrices would mean, how things should work, because that what your courses on 5th and 6th semester onwards, they will make use of those kind of statistics, probability, matrices, mathematics. You need to look at those study part. And if you're a biology background student, I'm sure you would have an equal good time in doing the math courses in first semester, second semester, third semester. So if you can do those, you should be able to do this. So putting a logic that your biology student doesn't hold good and it does not carry any weightage, all that it shows is you're trying to find a way out and not trying to pass your time to study. So my request is spend time, learn, and do things up, but this argument is not going to hold good anymore. Then we looked at loop construct. That we look at the example of we keep repeating the statements. So rather than keep writing the code again and again, you can put in a loop and we repeat that many times. So we look at the need of the loop. And then we also look at, can we define the whole code block as a one unit, single unit, and use that unit, and that is what we call functions. So we introduce the concept or need of what those are. Now from this lecture today, we will start formally into C programming. And when I say C programming, first we look at what is C language about, what the structure, and then how do you write basic programs, and then we slowly evolve. So first few things about C as a language. A lot of people think it is easy to learn language, but this could be a kind of method. It may be easy to learn quickly, but you could easily make a mistake and write a bad code. And so you need to start thinking, how do I write a good and better code? And because of C, just because some experience you can quickly write a good code may not be true. You need to write programs, dirty your hands, gain experience, and only when you write programs, dirty your hands, see the results, then only you'll be able to get a knowledge. Just by reading books, reading the example, copy pasting it, running it, is not going to gain you knowledge, and you would not understand that. But since you can do things up, certainly the results will motivate you. So look at that part. Other is you may or may not study. C is a one language, C++ is another language, and you cannot treat C++ as just the extension of C. There are C programs which C++ compiler won't even compile. So there are two different languages, different evolution, even though the syntax and stuff happens to roughly be the same. Few things we note down. C is a permissive language means it permits you to do whatever you want to do. You can use it to do productive things. You can use it to do destructive things as well. C as a language does not prevent you from doing harmful things. For example, when I give you a kitchen knife, you can use it properly to cut vegetables, cut fruits, but if you misuse it, you can cut your fingers as well. When you drive a car, you use it properly, it will help you going from one place to another. But if you misuse it, you might hit an accident, hit a pole, hit a tree, something, and damage the car, damage yourself. So look at C that way. If you have a good practice, to be good driver into good practice, you cannot simply start driving. I got a car, let me start driving. Or I just give you a knife, you cannot start cutting, but then it's likely you're going to cut your finger. So you need practice, you need to do things up, gain experience, then you become better user. So look from that perspective. As I said, C does not restrict you for corrupting the code, corrupting the data, memory leak. C will permit you whatever you want to do. And we can show you the examples, what you can do down the line. That means, but to be a good C programmer, to learn things, you need to dirty your hands, write basic programming, understand, execute, gain experience, then you get confidence, then we to write good programs. Just a little bit of history. It started in about 1978 as part of Unix operating system by original author Kernighan and Ritchie, and that is what you have a book called C Programming Language by Kernighan and Ritchie. That is 78, and then it evolved version 89, then new version 99, and currently you have version 2017, and things have evolved, things more have changed, but probably what we'll study will stick to C99 version for most of our discussions. Now, given that, what does a program look like and what do we do? So essentially, if you look at what is a program is you are writing something, it's a creation of engineer, it's a creation of a computer scientist which achieves something. You could write a program to compute. You can write a program to track how many COVID users, how many patients. You can write a program to determine interest. You can write a program to look at the efficiency of walking, your speed, whatever you want to do, you can write program and achieve that. It helps you compute and get the results. So program is essentially the creation of a computer engineer, which you write. When you run it, it will give results what is expected. So what does a C program look like? You'll probably see a C program when you write. Any file, the code we write, we use some editor. It could be a notepad, it could be VI editor, it could be Edit Plus, MacBook, Text Plus, BB Edit, whatever. Any editor you can use, text editor. You do not use word processor like MS Word or something of that kind, or WordPress. It has to be text editor so that there's nothing called a bold or formatted or font and all that. It's a simple text editor, no more. No formatting information. That is what you use to create a C program. So program has about 6 sections, and we'll slowly explain to you what those sections mean and try to go over. Not everything we'll discuss in one go as we will go. We'll look at those. So first is what is called a documentation section. That basically gives you information about what you want to do with the program. When I'm writing a program, what is the program supposed to do? Some description of what you want to do with this program. But what this program will achieve, that's a basic documentation. The documentation can occur all across the program, inside, outside. But in the beginning, you do describe what the program would do, what is expected, what the input parameters is going to accept, what the output is going to produce. In general, a brief description of what this program does. If you're using some specific tricks, how does this program do? That is what documentation. Second part is what is called a link section. You may be depending upon what is called lot of header files, including, and I'll give a layman example when I covered this. You're calling an API, you want to make, let's say, web access, you want to invoke a URL. So there will be some header files related to web access, you want to do that. You want to do printing, some header files for printing. You want to write into a file, some header files. So depending upon what kind of work you do, there will be different definitions, different includes what you link. Third is definitions. When you like we introduce concept of functions. So when you define those functions, so one is called declaring functions, other is called using those functions. So declaring is what you call definition section. So we declare whatever does, but you don't have to invoke. I can prepare the whole blueprint, whole design of a house, but I don't have to construct a house. Just because I prepare a whole blueprint or a map of a house, that doesn't mean I constructed the house. So constructing and designing are basically two different things. You need a design to construct, but first you do design, so that is what definition section. Then in the global declarations, we'll probably use, a lot of people use global variables. And generally, I would recommend not to use any global variables, global declarations, unless it is a must. To my belief, you can always avoid it. The less global variables you use, better you are, better the program would be. Because quite often, when people use global variables, they end up getting misused, and after a while, program becomes so big you can't even maintain, it becomes a nightmare to fix. Then you have what is called a main section, and then what is called a subroutine. In your book, if you look at the subroutine section, the function section is listed after the main. But to me, it is a better practice to declare all your functions, all your subroutines to come to before the main, and main should be the last one. But these are the primary 6 sections, and we'll look at these examples of those. But one thing you have to note, your C program, each of these sections is optional. You can have a file which none of them is present, and you can still have a compiler and program will still run. You can still compile. But generally, when you create a program, at least one of the sections should be present. Documentation is only one section, so typically your program should at least have either the definition sections or a link sections or global declarations or subroutine or main functions. There could be different programs, but one of them should be there. It is always a good practice to include documentation section saying what is this profile, what is this program about. Let's try those. But as I said, C is permissive language, allows you to do whatever you want to do, want to cause damage, want to write a bad program, C will not prevent you. So generally you expect at least one of them to be present, but is not mandatory. Other is how to write a program. C is a free form language. Free form language means I can write my entire program in a single line. It is something like this. Let's say you want to write a letter or an application. When you write a letter or an application, it typically has a format. For example, let's say if I were to just give me a minute. Can you guys see my screen?
No, sir.
Doesn't look like. Okay, stop. My laptop was running out of charge, so let me share it again. Can you guys see it? Hello?
We can see you, sir. We can't see the program.
No, you can't see the program, but you are seeing the Teams stuff. I mean, you can't see the program.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So you're seeing a blank. So let's say if I'm writing a letter, I would probably say to, I would say principal, KSIT, then I would say subject, then I would say a date at the end. Subject would be application for whatever something we write, and then we write the date. It has a particular format, and then we write dear sir, ma'am, and then we write whatever that is a particular format. But if I were to write, if it's a free form, whole thing becomes like this. In a single line, we have the same content, but do you think anybody would accept it? If everything goes in a single line, like what I'm doing here, what will happen to your application? Any thoughts?
It would look messy, sir.
Messy, nobody will accept it. If you get lost, you don't even know how to write an application, it becomes bad. But in C program, you can write whole thing in one line, it will still work, but look messy, you can't read it, you can't make sense out of it, but C would allow that. And that is what I'm trying to say, that, sorry. C is a free form language. That means you want to write a good documentation style, it is you, C does not prevent. So use programming styles. And again, there could be different ways and means. Somebody may want block definition some way, somebody may want to use two specific indentation, somebody may want four. It is upon individual taste. C does not prevent you that. So you decide how you want to do, but using a style improves the readability. It helps you do things. When you write a program, you use a block command. I'll talk about what a block command means. That means giving information in one go, 3, 4, 5 lines. And whenever you write some operator, operation A plus B or A minus B, put some spaces before and after the plus operator, improve readability. We talk about block constructor, define using braces. I often seen when I load a program, we use very cryptic variable names, X, Y, Z, and after 2 months when you read the program, you yourself won't know what this variable stands for. So use a proper variable name indicating what it's supposed to mean, what's supposed to be used for. So typically, if you look at programming styles, there are two kinds. Quite often you'll see this style, let's say if condition, this called a block. Between if condition and this, so two curly braces, but left curly braces appears on next line and everything inside that. Other could be different style where the curly braces come as part of your in the same conditions here. Both are acceptable, again depends upon individual use. So you as a programmer you have to make, but whichever one you use, stick to that. Other recommendation I would do is do not use tab characters. Depending on editor, different people will put as 8 spaces, 4 spaces, 2 spaces, and using tab, it will look good on the screen, but some other reading it, it may become messy. So avoid using tab characters. You can decide to use 2 spaces or 4 or 6, whatever, but we stick to that. And that is what you need to do to look at the coding style. Talk about conventions. So let me try to give you details of how to write a program and what tools you need to write a program. One is you can use code blocks, which is what I believe you'll be using in your labs. And it gives you different formatting styles. It's called rat leaf, which is basically left curly braces comes in the same line as the condition is, and there could be other ones. When you write a program will do something. You'll get some input from the user, and you'll be writing, displaying to the user. So certainly you need some input and some output. Now, how do you give you input? Most of the time, we'll be taught to use scanf, something of that kind, which I'll talk about. There are other ways of passing through what is called command line arguments. And that is my favorite, and that's much better because it makes it much easier for you to run and less user intervention. I'll discuss that, how to do that in code blocks. To pass command line arguments, you can go to setting of a project, set programs argument, specify those, and give you those details. I'm giving you basic guidelines on how to write a good C program, and then I come to your actual program. Other part is debugging. Most of us are very poor in debugging and troubleshooting. When things don't work, how do we fix things up? This debugging or called troubleshooting is never taught in any colleges, any school, any curriculum. In fact, right now I'm reviewing a PhD thesis from IIT Bombay, and the whole thesis is about how to enable a student to troubleshoot. So the whole work is what can be done to help a student troubleshoot the networking concept, something of that kind. Quite often you would see, you'll be told to use printf, a lot of times people use printf. If you are using a printf, which will come to them shortly, there's a very bad practice using printf for debugging, and I would say do not use that. Use some kind of IDE. It could be what is called your Visual Studio on Microsoft. It could be your code blocks. It could be any other tool which you want to use that online debuggers. It will be better. Learn to use debuggers. It could be GDB or like Visual Studio or code block or Eclipse or anything else would have the ability to give you debugging. So use those debuggers to debug the program rather than using a printf and then trying to figure out modify it. It's a very bad practice. Do not use printf to debug a programs. And we talk about code blocks. I'll try to give an example. maybe next lecture, how to use code blocks to debug the program, a basic idea, so that you can see what could be happening. We'll look at those parts. Having done that, let's say written a C program. What is involved in running a program? Because when I'm writing something, objective is to run. So do that, the first step is, as a developer, we need to create the program. Or we modify the existing program and update. So use the editor of a choice. As I said, do not use a word processor software like Microsoft Word or or other tools, Word or anything else, or RTF editor or something of that kind. Only text editor software has to be used and not any word processing software. Once you create a program, you need to compile it. After compiling it, so there are two steps involved. One is compiling, and one is linking with the libraries. So in the early stages, you will not see a difference because both compiling and linking happens together. But there are two separate steps. So don't differentiate, but actually you can do two different things. Compile separately, and link separately, and then run. But quite often you will see we'll compiling and linking them together. Then running the program, and then probably save the output, whatever run, and do things. And in the program, you'll basically be in the lab. You'll be running on the Linux system. So get familiar with some basic Linux or Unix operating system command, and that will be useful. I'll give a basic idea how to do that. When you write a program, we're basically using some basic variable types, and we essentially look at integer types, decimal types. We'll basically get into more details, but I've given you idea of signed or int, like signed number, by integer signed or unsigned. We look at, and then we look at the header file, which is the link section. We start talking about it, and I'll come into those details a little more detail later, and talk about, even we'll look at the complex number programs and so on and so forth. And even these types, you look at int, there are actually 18 different subclasses of int. I'll quickly list out, but you'll probably not go through right now, but slowly we'll look at, introduce to understand. So we look at integers. We have a type bool, unsigned char, unsigned sort, unsigned int, only unsigned, unsigned long, unsigned long long. Same is to for flow integers, unsigned char, signed sort. So different between unsigned and signed. So many variables for integer, and same is to for floating point. Four types: float, long, long double, and then you have boolean, floating point, complex. So basically 18 types of different variables. Well, we slowly, when you start with, we'll basically start with basic integers, and then slowly delve into, as the need be, to other variable types. Since you'll be using on Linux systems, when I come to the lab, whenever offline happens, so basic commands, you work on a terminal. When you compile, you need to work on a terminal, or you can use code block built in. So next section, I might even give you a demo of how to use a code block. How to get a terminal, Control Alt. When you press, you open a terminal window, or you can search terminal and open the terminal window. Few commands want to look at what is happening. One command is ls, which stands for list. Something like when you run on a terminal, when you open it, it will look something like this, which I've been using. So if we look at here, it gives you all the file names here, just details, but something called a ls minus l, it gives you long details, like who created it, group, the size, when it was created, what the file name, those details. So get used to basic idea what ls and ls minus l command is. Then there are few other commands, which is called changing a directory, which workplace. So slowly, like in Windows, you go to different directories. Same is true here. You have different directories. You cd command to know where you are. The command called pwd. So like if I'm here, I'm the current directory. Sorry. So it says I'm in this directory user, like Windows you want to see, look at the tree where you are, same way you can probably look at, and then I can cd to my home directory, and then my directory changes. So when I come to the lab, you probably be better. Rename the file. You can right click on the Windows file editor, or you can simply do move command and come out of terminal. You can type exit or control D out of that window. So now let's look at how do you run a program, what a program will look like. Now most of you may not have a laptop or a desktop, which is you can still work with on a phone. All of you have a phone, like you're accessing this using internet. So rather than worrying about how to do things up, you can actually go to the different websites which helps you run online program. So one such site, let me give you, is it is http online gdb.com. There are a few other sites, so let me open one of the sites. Can you guys see, is my screen visible properly or too small a font?
It's visible, sir.
Visible. So you look at, I've gone to the site onlinegdb.com, online C compiler. If you go to only onlinegdb.com, let's say, let me just do that. You decide which program, something, GDB, you come to by default C program, select the language here. So you can actually take your phone, open the browser, and you can type onlinegdb.com and select the language C, and you can write a C program. And this is the basic program you can see. So maybe can I request you to tap, open the browser in a Chrome or whatever browser you use, and can you access this web page? And tell me, are you able to access it? On a desktop or a laptop or a phone, open the browser, can you access this?
Yes, sir.
So now look at this program. This is a complete program here. So this first thing you see given in slash star, this is what is called documentation section. So in C language, anything that comes between slash and star, after that whatever I run, anything that comes between slash star followed by star slash, that's called command. So this is a command that is meant for user information to know what the program is doing. So like this is online GDB telling you there's a tool for learning C. So we want to write our command first program. So we're writing a first program to learn C. So look at, we talk about documentation section. So you have a slash star. Do not put a space between slash and a star. Then you would have a problem there. It won't compile. So putting a command, first slash star should be contiguous after you write anything until the last slash star. So anything that happens would be a basically the command line documentation section. Then a program, you typically you'll see a program in this line called has include stdio.h. This is link section, basically saying when you write a simple program, our initial program would involve displaying some values, outputting something. That is what we would basically be looking at. So how do we support input and output on a terminal, on a console. So C has some header files, some basic library support, some basic functions available, and that is given in stdio. So typically any C program, you will see this stdio. So syntax is has include, do not put a space, and stdio you need in Angular left parenthesis. So if you put this, you probably have an error, doesn't understand. So you put an Angular parenthesis. This indicates that we are going to use system-defined libraries, system-defined headers for our standard input and output. stdio is standard input and output. Typically, first line for basic programs, you'll be using it, but you may not all the time require it depending on the requirement, but initially you will do that. Then I give my documentation. I do not have any global section here. I do not have any declaration, definition. I have only my main section here. So when you run a program, when you write something, when you run, system should know where to start. What should be a first line of code that I need to look at the program which I need to run? And that is identified by a function called main. So it has to be function main. If you write anything else, let's say main one or something else, you try to run, it will say not able to link, you will not be able to run. So in a C program initially, which you want to run, should always have the function which is called main, and syntax is called int. Some of the books, some of the literature, you will see a different syntax called void. That's the bad programming, don't use that. And we'll come to that, why do we need an int? When you go to the lab or run things up, then you probably will discuss why do we need an int. But right now you assume that we'll be using an int. So int main, as I said, quite often you see a syntax like this. Other would be, I can write here, and this is my preferred style. But again, it depends on your choice. But this whole thing within the two curly braces is what is called a block. For readability purpose, make sure these blocks are inside a loop, at least two spaces. Quite often you'll see you'll be writing like this. So you don't know what is happening. I can even write like this. Program would still work. But there is a bad readability. For readability purposes, make the proper indentation. So the print, I prefer two spaces. You can prefer 4 or 6, but then the 2 should be good enough. So what this program does, we are saying this is the main part, and I'm saying printf. Printf is a function which is system provided to us, which said whatever comes inside, print it. So inside we are saying print hello world, and that is what is actually printing hello world, and then return indicates is my program successful. 0 normally means success, so returning 0. When you do that, you run this program, you see a run icon there, and you would see program would run. Let me run it. It's compiling, and you see a hello world there. Can you all run this program on your phone or a laptop and see are you able to run this program? And let me know. Ready-made program given to you. Don't know to make any changes. Just go to onlinegdb.com, use the C language, and see can you do that part.
Yes, sir.
And please
Actually.
join this. Yeah. So please join this as team and don't join as a guest. When you don't join as a guest, attendance would not be counted. Log in using the ID, then join. Yeah. Can you raise hands? How many people are able to run the program? Is your hand button there? Can you click on this and say raise 1, 2, 3, 4, 8? So good number of people can run this program. Good. You got the basic idea of how to run the program. Now let me make changes to it. Let's say I want to greet somebody and I want to greet by a name. So I would like to say hello, and my So I'm done here. So let's say enter to execute console. I'm done. Now let's say I want to greet and command an argument. I say hello Ram. Just putting your name, you can put your own name, and I want to print this hello Ram. So I want to pass this as an argument to the program, and what I expect in the program is it should print hello Ram or hello your name, whatever it is. So how do you give this name as an input? So one syntax is the printf. What you put in this is called a simple format. What a print will come in. So I can basically say hello and say hello percentage s. That basically meaning I want to print a string because whatever you type here, string is a sequence of characters like RAM, ABC, whatever that is. And then what is that? So it is a percentage as so anything is called a placeholder. I need to specify what value I put it in. So there has to be a variable there which indicates what is the placeholder. So since I'm doing command and argument, how do I tell my program that this is my first argument? So normally in the main program, there's two different variations. One is like int main. Other variation is you'll say int argument count. We'll get into details of what those character RGB means. Right now, just ignore it. We'll get into more details. It tells me how many arguments and what is each argument. Since I'm passing one, I would basically say first parameter argv1. So this would basically tell me when I run this program, it would say hello Ram. Let me run this. Can you guys see hello Ram? Hello?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Can you run and put your own name and see, can you see your own git yourself? Make changes, greet yourself, see are you able to make those changes.
Then why can't we use scanf here?
I'll come to that part. Can you do that? Then I'll come to scanf. I'll talk about it. Good question. You can clear your hands. But can you run and tell me, are you done with how many people are able to run that? How many people are able to greet yourself? So keep your hand, who are people able to greet. I'll answer the question about the scanf. Give me a minute. So Manoj, are you able to run with greeting yourself?
Sir, could you explain this again?
Okay. I'm saying I want to run the program and it should greet me myself with the name. So let me press enter and do that part. Okay. When I run the program, I want to be greeted whatever name I'm giving. So, and I'm saying, so whatever I'm trying to give, I should get a greeting, hello Ram, or I can even say welcome, something of that kind. So when I print, I want to print something, what is the value given to me, a variable there. So argv is a variable. Right now, I'm not discussing what argv actually means, how to use that. When I get into more details of arguments, we'll get into details there. But right now, argv1 means argument variable. That whatever we run the program, the first argument we pass, that becomes argv1. If I put a space and say Ram Rustagi, this becomes my second variable. So argv is an array or list of command and arguments. Argcc means count of arguments, and this is list of argument variables. So argv1 would refer to RAM, argv2 would refer to this thing. So all I'm saying is, can you run with argv1 and C are able to do that? Then I come to the answer of what is called a scanf. I'll come to that part. So if I were to run, so since I given two arguments, if I were to say argv2, it would display me anything you write, put a semicolon at the end, which indicates terminator that my statement is over. So when you look at this syntax part, we'll define that. So when you run this program, it will say, hello, Ram, welcome, Rustak. Let me run that and see does that work. You can see, hello, Ram, welcome, Rustak. Any questions about this?
Thank you, sir.
Now you look at here, even put printf in two different lines, but output is coming on a single line. It is not. If I want to say that each one should appear on a different line, I need to tell my format string that one line is over and next line starts. And the new line, which is called a new line, that the next line is indicated by two characters, which is called \n, not a slash n, but \n. \n means you print hello, take the value of argv1, what is specified value would be taken here, and then say \n, that means go to the next line, and then output would come to the next line. So let's run that again. With that, I save it and run, and see now output would come under two lines. Hello Ram. So new line separates. You can put hello new line either here, or I can put in even here. Both are same. I'm saying first line print it. When you put second one, first go to next line and then print it. So it depends on your requirement how to run to program. This would basically work. Other one to do that is, I don't want to write two line. I can say here new line starts, and then I can say welcome %s. So I'm saying I need two variables. First one for this, second one for this. So I need to pass the two variables there, and I can even do that. If it was a single line, the output would be hello. Whatever the first variable is, it is placed there. Whatever second variable is, it will print it here. So if I were to put my console input, let's say I put artificial intelligence, artificial becomes my first argument, intelligence becomes my second argument. So when I run this, it will say, hello artificial, next line, welcome intelligence. You see there is a space here. It is because after new line, I said put one space here. So whatever output you want, you have to decide how to format your things. And that's what we are doing. Any questions? Any questions, guys? So I think I'm running out of time. The next class I'll discuss about scanf. Why don't you just scanf? Why do this option? I'll talk about in the next class. So run the program, check yourself and see how you can run it up.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Any other questions? Otherwise, I'll stop.